I think they're going to allow like 25,000 people to come to the game, like a third of the stadium. So it's not going to be the environment they had, but what was beauty about that game is the Texas fans would sing the song "Eyes of Texas Upon You," Boomer Sooner, and so it's one of the great traditions of football. But I'm glad they're playing the game, and the game's going to come on like 10 in the morning on Saturday. I wish they would play it later, but anyway, the thing I'm going to miss with the Lobos is we're not going to play the Aggies. And that's been going on how many years? Almost 100 years.
I think 100 years as well.
It's going to be the first time we've never played the Aggies in 100 years. And that's why, even though the New Mexico is going to have a schedule of 8 games, we don't know if they're going to have a home game because the governor hasn't lightened up the restriction, but I hope they do. But I'll tell you what, I hope college football makes it. But like you said, there's incidents happening with teams all over the country. I just wonder, can they make it to December? What do you think?
I hope so. I know the University of Houston had 5 of their games canceled already, and as you mentioned, even the NFL is having.
Well, welcome everybody to America Talk It Up. I've got my host, Ed Nunes, who's been with me for quite a while. Ed, we had an exciting week last week. We had NFL, we had Major League Baseball playoffs, we had the NBA. NBA's at the finals right now, and we had a lot of sports going on. Of course, here in New Mexico, we don't have high school sports. Hopefully, that's going to happen, but it doesn't look good right now with our status with our governor. But with all that saying, what was the biggest game that you watched this week?
Well, I'm a big Laker fan, so the Lakers are leading the NBA Finals right now, 3-1. I've been a Laker fan since '72. Jerry West was my first poster on the wall, and I got to say this: that when LeBron James came to the Lakers, I kind of was skeptical because I've never been the biggest LeBron James fan, but I recognize greatness. Now, again, being inside the bubble there for the NBA, I think it was difficult. I think they've done a good job of that. The ratings are way down. They're way down. But as far as what the league has done, being able to get the championship going and no infections inside that bubble, I think the league has done a great job. And I'm just hoping tomorrow night the Lakers can close out the Miami Heat. But I got to tell you, one of the baseball games I saw last night was San Diego and Los Angeles. Went down at the bottom of the ninth. San Diego's got the bases loaded, 2 out. And man, wow. Finally get the guy to ground out to second base and the Dodgers win. But I'm telling you, there was pitch, foul off pitch. I mean, just the way baseball, it was high drama, man. I couldn't stop watching.
So if you're a Los Angeles fan of the Dodgers and the Lakers, you're in prime time right now.
I was a Dodger fan. I'm not so much a huge baseball fan of a team, but I like to watch. Reggie Jackson was my favorite player with the Yankees back in the day, so I could say I was more of a Reggie fan than a Yankee fan, but I'm more of a guy that likes to watch towards the end of the year. I keep my eye on baseball, though. I keep my eye on baseball a lot. It's because I like sports. But right now, if you're looking at the way the playoffs are shaping out, Dodgers are looking pretty good. They're up 2-0 on San Diego. Houston, who a lot of people, we talked about this, Oakland came back yesterday. They were down 3 runs, and Oakland came back, and that series is 2-1. But there's a lot of people that would be mad to see the Astros back in the World Series. They might be there. Again, they've got Correa, Springer, Bregman, Altuve. They've got, and they're without Verlander. You mentioned Verlander having Tommy John surgery. Zach Greinke, they're not sure if he's going to be able to pitch. So they're without 2 of their better arms right now, and they're still doing pretty well.
That game yesterday, they had a lead going into the 6th inning, and I've been saying the Astros got the hitting, but the pitching is not there as it was last year, and the pitching got them in that game. Oakland came back and won the game because, and if Astros don't get to the finals, it's because of pitching. But right now, their bats are hot. They scored enough runs to win yesterday, but the Oakland bats were better, and the pitching failed the Astros. Now, getting back to the Padres and the Dodgers, I go back going to Dodger Stadium back in the 60s when I used to visit my grandparents in Long Beach, and I've been to a lot of great Dodger games. And then when I lived in San Diego back in the mid-'80s, I started going to Padres games because I always it was easy to get tickets. And so I became a kind of Padre fan when I lived there. And then when I left to go to San Francisco, sure enough, I became a Giants fan back at Candlestick. But I'm kind of rooting for the Padres because they hadn't been there for a long time. And they came close yesterday, that's for sure. And so hopefully we're going to see, I think they just don't have the pitching to beat the Dodgers. Right now, if I had to look at all the teams, the Dodgers are the best baseball team right now.
I want to bring up another point about the Dodgers and Padres yesterday. Bellinger robbed Tatis of a home run. I don't know if you saw that. What a great play by Bellinger, because if he doesn't rob him of that, and by the way, Fernando Tatis Jr., what a heck of a young player he is. They asked the old man, Fernando Tatis Sr., who's better. He said Junior by far, not even close. Then he's a young star for the Padres. Manny Machado hit a home run yesterday. He golfed it. I mean, what a swing! What a great swing for Manny Machado.
So I'm kind of rooting for the Padres because I lived there. My daughter went to high school there. I have friends in San Diego, so I like to see them win. But I wouldn't be disappointed if the Dodgers won because they're good. They're good. Now I would love to see a Astros Dodger rematch. And I would love to see the Astros back in there. I just don't think the Astro has enough pitching. But, God, I was really impressed with Tampa Bay, how they handled the Yankees yesterday.
Yankees came out in Game 1, and Giancarlo Stanton is having a great series.
Right.
I think he had as many home runs as Mantle, more home runs in the postseason so far, I think, than Mantle or Gehrig or Jackson or Reggie Jackson. He's a man, and he's always hurt. Giancarlo Stanton seems to be always hurt. Mike Judge, the right fielder is Aaron Judge. I'm sorry. Aaron Judge, the right fielder for New York, has not hit as well in this series, but Giancarlo Stanton is blistering hot right now.
Now, here's the thing. They say the velocity of his bat speed was 120 miles an hour velocity, and he hit a ball about 489, 490. That's Mickey Mantle type distance. That's big time the other day. And he did that in Petco Park. And remember, Petco Park, the ball doesn't fly out of there, okay? But so he had about a 485, 490. It's one of the longest home runs and when I watched the replay, then they had that velocity,
right, how fast it gets off the bat.
And most of those guys, they'll give you Aaron Judge. You think he's at 117 or 116. This thing was 120 from this Stratton. So that's this guy must have some pop, Ed.
You know what? He always has. The only problem with his 2 seasons with the Yankees, he's been on the DL a lot. He's been hurt. And, they've got some pop in that lineup. Gleyber Torres, Judge, Voit, Giancarlo Stanton, they've got some pop for sure. But you mentioned pitching, and I like their relief pitching. When they go to Chapman in the ninth, it's kind of tough to beat them. But Tampa Bay owns the Yankees, and they've owned them the last 2 seasons. The Yankees did jump out in that series and led the series 1-0, and since then Tampa Bay's won 2 straight. So we'll see if New York can get to best of 5. Tampa Bay wins 1 more, and it's over.
So anyway, I wouldn't be surprised. Tampa Bay can get to the World Series. They've had outside the Dodgers. They're probably the number 2 team in baseball. The way they've been playing.
I like that team a lot. I really do. And as I mentioned, New York has had their problems with them, and they're down 2-1. Let's see if they can overcome that and come back and win the series.
Well, as a boy growing up, and I was a Yankee fan because I loved Mickey Mantle because he was from Oklahoma, and I was a kid here in Albuquerque. I always wore a Yankee hat, I even had a Mickey Mantle jersey, So and then in the late '60s when Mantle left and the Yankees they started losing. I kind of became more of that was when Albuquerque became the farm club of the Dodgers, in the late 60s. Mm-hmm. And I became more of a kind of a Dodger fan because the players here in Albuquerque would go to, the Dodgers, mm-hmm. and I would follow those players. And so that's how I became kind of a Dodger fan. And then when I became the sales manager for Pitney Bowes in San Diego in 1985, that's when the Padres had Steve Garvey and had some great teams. So I started following the Padres. And then in 88, I got this job in San Francisco, the marketing director for Pete Maravich and Mitchell, and they had season tickets for the Giants. Now, nobody went to the Giants games during the week because they were at nighttime, and you know how cold Candlestick would get at night.
Oh, yeah.
As Mark Twain said, the coldest winter I ever spent was the summer in San Francisco. And
even in July, it's real cold out there.
Oh, yeah. I remember you were talking about Zubiotti and those guys, our old buddies.
Yeah, Ricky Zubiotti.
They came out to visit me one summer. They thought it would be cool to come to San Francisco. So I picked them up at the airport, and they're wearing shorts and their T-tops, and it was cold as hell. We ended up going to a store to get them some sweatpants and sweatshirts.
Oh, yeah.
Because they figure in the middle of July, you think it'd be good weather in San Francisco, right? No, it's cold. And so nobody went to the games. We had 4 season tickets tickets, box seats. Nobody went to the games during the week. They all went the weekend games during the day. And so I would just pick up I would get to the office at about 5:15, and I would go to the box and pull the tickets out of the drawer, and I say, "Hey, anybody going to the game tonight?" No. So I take the 4 box seats. I go I get there about an hour and a half, and there, people at the will call window. I would sell the tickets for like $20 a piece. And that was my beer and hot dog money, and that's how I went to the games. And I went to like 40-some games that year, and I went to 20 games in '89. I went to 25 A's game and 40 Giants game, and that was the year they were in the World Series. Both teams made it.
Yes.
And I remember watching Canseco. You know how hard he could hit a ball. But
Man.
nobody knew he was on steroids then. I just thought it was natural. One season he comes in and he said he was lifting weights and he looked a lot stronger, but the ball really flying out of there at Oakland Alameda Stadium.
The Bash brothers.
Bash and McGuire.
Now, I want to make a point about that because at that time, when the steroid era, now Commissioner Seelig at that time, believe me, he knew. But the ratings were up, attendance is out the strike of '94, and then when you had Bonds and Sosa and McGuire going, for the home runs, Seelig knew the whole time. And then all of a sudden there was a problem, and we got to stop this. But the revenue that they were making, and they made people forget ratings were out the roof, right?
Yeah.
They knew what was going on. Juan Gonzalez, Brady Anderson from the Orioles hit 50 home runs. Guys that had never hit more than 30 were hitting all kinds of home runs.
So it was really, you're going to love this, Ed. So in the San Francisco media market, they ran commercials about buying season tickets or tickets. Every professional team had commercials going on. Hey, buy tickets for this game. So the Oakland A's, their commercial, they had this girl almost like in a baseball bikini looking shot. I mean, really good, gorgeous looking girl. And she gets on in a 30-second commercial. She says, "Chicks dig long ball." And that was their commercial. And she wore an A's hat, and she was really good looking lady. And it caught your attention. You're watching television, and this woman says, "Chicks dig long ball. Please buy A's tickets." And I think a lot of guys went out there just so they could see the girls, But that was a very effective commercial to sell season tickets or tickets, But that was true. Baseball knew that home runs sold tickets.
Well, think about that. And I remember this. Reggie Jackson actually played last year as an A in 1987. He played with Canseco and Mark McGuire. But think about it. They were hitting home runs, hitting each other with the forearms. And I'm talking tape measure shots. Both McGuire and Canseco, Dave Henderson, Terry Steinbach. They had a very good team. Dave Stewart. They were a very good team. They really were.
So, here's something would be curious. And they didn't have the technology. And I wonder what the launch philosophy was on Canseco and McGuire and Reggie Jackson. I got to believe it's up there at 117 to 120 miles an hour. Don't you think? They didn't have because we know what they have now, but I got to believe they had that kind of launch philosophy, right?
Yeah, Frank Howard. Frank Howard is the Washington Senator guy, the big Frank Howard, and you wonder what kind of launch velocity he had on his home runs. Canseco, I think, hit the roof one time at Toronto, the old stadium in Toronto. He hit the roof. And, again, when he turned those wrists, man, that guy had some power. There's no question.
I was sitting out. I went to an A's game, and I'm sitting out in the bleacher seats. In those days, it was $4.50. It was $3.50 to take BART round trip, and you could buy a bleacher seat almost every night there for $4.50. So, and then so if you brought $20, you could have a good night there at the ballpark, if you had $20. But I remember one game, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, and I wish I could find a video on this, Ed. Canseco gets up, and he launched a ball. It was a low-line drive. I mean, it was like, it barely cleared the shortstop head. Then the ball started rising and rising. I mean, it was like a rocket shot. And it hit the scoreboard right. There's a scoreboard out in left field, at least 385. And I mean, it hit it hard. It might have gone farther. That's how. And I just wonder what kind of velocity he had, Canseco. He must have had something, right?
Yeah, no question. Plus, he had some bat speed. If you remember back in the day, the guy had some bat speed. Steroids has, they give you that kind of ability, man. He definitely had some bat speed.
If you would have saw that, what you would have said, oh wow, because I never saw that from anybody.
Man, no.
And he had some power, and And boy, he was attraction. Him and Mark McGuire, the Bash brothers. And in those days, they never sold out. They were lucky they got 24,000 people to a game. Maybe on the weekend they might have gotten.
Even with those two, they never sold out.
They did a few games, but maybe 30,000 at the most. So you could always go to an A's game and buy a bleacher seat for $4. They had another seat for $6, and it was really cheap to go to those games. And then I had those season tickets for the Giants. So I would say 1989 is, they said, the summer of, what's that famous song, the Boys of the Summer, that famous book.
Yes.
That was probably 1989 was my Boys of Summer, because I got to see two teams make it to the World Series. Hey, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to get back to segment 2. We still got to talk about NFL football, college football, and I still want to talk about the Lakers. And so, guys, we'll be back to the next segment. Welcome back to segment 2 for America Talk It Up. And of course, I've got my good old buddy, the Highland Hornets. I've got Ed Nunes. And Ed, it's been a great segment so far. Let's get back. Let's finish up with the Lakers, the NBA, because by the time this broadcast gets on the air, it will probably be all over with the Lakers winning it. But I think it's great to see the Lakers with the championship. Now I understand they're gonna wear some kind of jersey for Kobe Bryant in this next game.
We call them the Mamba jerseys. That's jerseys that Kobe Bryant came up with. And I got to tell you this, they're going for their 17th title. Now, five of those...
Is it seventh?
17 as a team. 17, but 5 of those were with the Minneapolis Lakers.
Back in the 40s.
Back in the day. Now, I got to tell you a story. I read a story, The Lakers. The book was by Roland Lansby. And in the early 80s, they were going to throw all those trophies away from that they won in Minneapolis. They were in the dumpster, and I guess they pulled them out. So they're going for their 17th title. They'll tie Boston for the number of NBA titles. I'm going to tell you this again. Now, LeBron James is polarizing for a lot of different reasons, right? There's some people that really love him, and there's some people that hate him, and some people that hate him don't like him for reasons that have nothing to do with basketball. They don't like his political affiliations or whatever else. I'm going to tell you the truth. When he went to Miami a couple of years ago and had that ESPN show and saying, I'm taking my talents to South Beach and we're going to win 5, 6 championships, that turned me off for about 3 years. I'm not going to lie, because I know how hard it is to win one championship, and you're talking about winning 5 or 6. But my son said this to me about 8 years ago, Dad, whatever happens if LeBron comes to the Lakers. And at that time I laughed. I said, that's not going to happen. But it did. It did. So here we are. So now look, though, for my list, now if he wins a title, he's in the circle. But still, you've got Magic, Kareem, Kobe. He's not going to crack that list even if he wins 2 more. Those guys will always be, or Shaquille O'Neal. Those guys will always be above him as great Lakers. Now, as far as where his place is in the game, people are saying, is he better than Jordan? For me, I'm going to tell you no, okay, because Michael Jordan won 6 championships, and to me, when the pressure was on in the fourth quarter, he wanted the ball. He didn't defer to other players the way I think LeBron does sometimes. I love him, Jordan. Now, LeBron, sometimes I think when the pressure's on, he looks to pass, to give it to somebody else. And I'm not saying he doesn't make plays. If you look at the way this man is playing at 35 years old and his speed and explosiveness and the way he keeps his body in condition, it's amazing. But Jordan, we saw him make plays when the game was on the line. He said, give me the ball. He made defensive plays. He was on the All-NBA defensive team 9 times. So for me, I'm always going to say Michael Jordan's the greatest player I ever saw, for me.
You know what, Ed? I agree with you 120%. Now, here's my take on it. I think LeBron James is probably one of the top 3 players of all time, no doubt about it. But Michael Jordan never lost an NBA. When he got in the finals, they never lost. Now, LeBron James lost. He's got in the finals, and he's lost.
3 and 6 in the finals.
Yes. And so Michael Jordan's record's better, and when the clutch came on for the final shot, he came through. And I lived in Chicago for 3 of those championships, and so I remember him really very well with Luke Longley. And I don't know if I told you this story. I think I told it with Henry DeFoy in one of our podcasts. I called Luke Longley up, and I said, Luke, can I come out to a Bulls practice? And he got me in. It's at the Berthold Center. It's north of Chicago, and that's where they practice. And that was when Michael Jordan and Rodman and all those players. Steve Kerr was on the team, and so I got out there and I had to go through a security gate, and Longley got me in there. And of course, Longley said, "Now listen, Marty, don't say anything because if I hear that I got you in, I might get a little in trouble, but I'll get you into the practice room." So I got in, and I got up there, and I set up they had some seats up there at the Berthold Center. That's where they practice. And I got out there, and I'm going to tell you, I never saw in my whole life how physical the Bulls practices were. Remember Shirts and Skins? It was kind of like Shirts and Skins. Jordan would have
I
four
remember
guys.
that.
Yeah.
I have to laugh because that's what we played. We didn't have no practicers back in the day, Shirts and Skins. Yeah, I remember that.
And here's Jackson, the coach. He's sitting there reading the book, and then there was Tex Winters kind of running the practices. And I mean, it was the most physical practice. It was so physical. They were fighting. Even Rodman kicked Longley's legs, and it was rough. And, Jordan didn't even want to lose a practice game, even in practice. And it was so physical. And I said, man, I've been to Lobo practices. Of course, I've been to high school. I never saw an NBA practice. And they had a game the next night. 2 days later, they had a big game. And it was like a fist fight, fighting, physical, pushing, everything. And then after practice was over, I went up to Longley. I said, is this the way it is? And he said, Marty, the games are easy for us. The practice is the toughest thing. And Jordan hates to lose at practice. That's what made Jordan the great player. He hated to lose.
At anything.
At anything. I don't care if it was pool, Tinley Weeks, anything he played, cards. God knows you didn't want to play him in poker. and so he was there's nothing, but LeBron James, I want to give us credit. The guy deserves the credit he's getting, but I just don't, if I had to pick one guy in a foxhole and we had to rely on winning this situation, it would be Michael Jordan.
I think so too, and I think the other thing that separated now Kobe Bryant to me is up there, and I think with Michael Jordan. But the thing that separated those two was when Michael Jordan went to the air. Nobody attacked in the air like he did. In fact, the Pistons said that they had a set of defensive rules, the Jordan rules, designed around him. They knew that if he got in the air, there's nothing they could do. So they would do whatever they could, and those rules allowed for that. Then they tackle, elbow, prevent him from getting to the basket. Because once he got to the basket and got in the air, who stopped him? And some of the most creative moves, jaw-dropping moves. Marv Albert, remember his call, a spectacular move by Jordan when he hung in the air and made that shot left-handed. It made my jaw drop. I couldn't believe it. So I think, again, when the game is on the line. Now, look, LeBron, he made me mad the other night. I'm not going to lie. I thought the first half was not good. And I expected a lot more since they lost the night before, or 2 nights before. And I told my son, I said, watch out, he might drop 40 on him. He did not play well the first half. I thought he was kind of passive. And that's the difference between him and Jordan. Jordan lived every possession as if it was death, man. And, he had the conditioning to do that. Now, don't get me wrong. LeBron played excellent in the second half. And there's times when he goes to the basket, Marty, and turns that corner and elevates, and it makes my jaw drop. I'm like, look at this guy getting up at 35 years old. So he does amaze me, but for me, Michael Jordan is still the greatest basketball player that I've ever seen.
Now, another thing, I failed to mention this. I was amazed how hard Dennis Rodman practices. People see him as a goofy guy, all the stuff off the court, Rodman. God, when he was at practice, he just really went at it. And Jordan would push him. And I remember Jordan yelling at Rodman, hey, Rodman, you got to do this, and he made the players around him very good. And, of course, Scottie Pippen was the greatest compliment to Jordan. They were a great team that, played with each other. But Rodman, the thing about Dennis Rodman, he studied where the ball bounced off the rim. He knew where the ball was going to go.
Incredible.
And now here's the guy, I don't think he was 6'7", maybe 6.5. He wasn't
6'6".
But he was averaging 14 to 15 rebounds a game, and back in those days. So I have to give my hats off to him. He wasn't a great scorer, but boy, he could play defense. And so those Bulls teams were tough. And then Steve Kerr, and they had a guy before him, Paxson. Mm-hmm. Those guys were perfect for that triangle offense because they could hit the three out there. You leave them alone, they just nail that three all day long.
Couple stories now. One of the things they had from The Last Dance, and I had read this years before. Dennis Rodman, right? We notorious. He likes to have a good time, right? There's no question about it. They said that one night he went out and had 50 shots of Jägermeister. 50. I would probably.
I believe it.
I would probably be dead. Honest to God. I can take 3 maybe, and that's it. They said the next day of practice he's running around like nothing ever happened. So the guy had an incredible system, and then after the games, they said that he'd go ride the bike for 90 minutes and lift weights. Now, you're right. His offensive skills, he could not hit a jumper. He's not a turn and face guy. He's going to get the tip ins. But what amazed me about him was that guys, when they jump on the third jump, they're winded. On the third jump, he's like a pogo stick. Give me that. There's the only guy that I saw in playoff games, 0 points, 20 rebounds, 0 points, 23 rebounds, 0 points, 25 rebounds, dominated from a defensive and rebounding aspect. Incredible.
And he won me over. I went to a couple Bulls games. I didn't go to a lot of Bulls games because it was a hard ticket to get. But what I saw, the hustle. He always hustled, diving for balls, going after things.
In the stands.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I think he hit a lady with his tennis shoes one time, and she sued him at the Palace in Detroit. Yeah, he was notorious for that.
He was an all-time NBA character. And you're right. After the game, the nightlife and the stunts he did, he was just a wild man in the streets. But when he showed up, the thing I was impressed at that practice. Boy, did he play hard! It was the most physical thing I ever saw. And to this day, when I tell that story, I'm not making this up. It was like war, and Michael Jordan took everything like it's war. I mean, nobody's going to beat me, and that's his attitude.
Think about Luke Longley. Now, Luke, of course, played here at the University of New Mexico and was from Australia. And when they said when he played pickup games, he hadn't played a lot of playground ball, which, you have to win to hold the court. And he thought Americans were crazy that we put that much passion into playground games. Now, they said that Jordan would undress him, man. It got on him and Kukoc all the time.
All the time.
So I'm not so sure that Luke to this day, again, Michael Jordan wants to win, like you said. Who's the biggest target on that team? Now, Luke was not a great center, but he's perfect for the triangle, right? They give him the ball. He's a good passer. He can go to the basket and hit that little left-hand hook. He hit the little mid-range.
And he had a big
play some defense, right?
Yeah, the perfect thing. Tex Winter, who invented the triangle offense, who coached it, he was the head coach at Kansas State going back in his college days. But the key of the triangle offense is you got to have a big body that takes up space, because they would pick and roll. He would set up screens, but you had to be a great passer, and he was perfect for the Bulls. He fit that role, and he was so lucky that because he wasn't doing very well with the Timberwolves at Minnesota, and he was kind of like on his way out of the league. But Tex Winter saw what we could pick this guy up fairly cheap. They got him, and he fit right in with the Bulls. Of course, Michael Jordan made every player around him very good, and Jordan would come down on him. I never got in that conversation with Luke, but I could tell Luke was always being, they came down on him. He was like a sounding board, I guess, for some of these guys. But anyway, going back to this Laker finals, I got to believe they're the best team so far. They are, and then you know what? The thing I miss about a Laker broadcast is when I was a kid here in Albuquerque. On a certain night with the 50,000 watts, what's that station in L.A. that would had the they had
KTLA? I don't know if it's KTLA. I can't remember which that was.
But it was 50,000 watts, and you could pick it up in Albuquerque at night. And I remember hearing that voice of Chick Hearn. Boy, did
he was so smooth.
You're talking about the great Dodger broadcaster Vince Scully. Chick Hearn is a legend. And I remember back in the 60s, I never heard the word swish. But he used to say swish, and we knew it was a basket, But he was the one that, every broadcaster, and since you are a professional broadcaster yourself, everybody has some kind of signature saying, like Jerry Coleman for the Padres, put a star on that baby.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
He was a good announcer. Jerry Coleman was very good.
But I remember Chick Hearn would yell the word swish. And
he was something else. He really was good, very good.
And there was a guy named, I think it was Roy Story for the Los Angeles Kings. His signature thing was shot on goal. But anyway, Chick Hearn was. If people were listening to this podcast, look up Chick Hearn. I think if you go to YouTube, you could write his name down, listen to his voice, and he was magic.
Incredible. One of the greatest I've ever heard.
What was his sidekick, Cadillac?
Stu Lance for a while. I can't remember who else it was before that. One quick story about him. He had Al Michaels as his sidekick for a while. Now, Chick Hearn did not want a color commentator. He didn't. He finally got used to it. Sort of like Mike Roberts, the great Lobo broadcaster, did not want a sidekick. He didn't. And then they finally got used to him. But at one time, Al Michaels served as Chick Hearn's sidekick. Not very long.
So that's something I miss him on the broadcast, and he did it for a long time.
Oh, he was awesome.
And
he was
was
so good.
And he was the one that came up with Michael, Cooper, the Lobos, Michael Cooper.
Koopa Loop.
He came up with the thing, Coop the Loop.
Yeah, Koopa Loop.
So, he was good, and just like Vince Scully was too, and so anyway, I don't see anybody beating the Lakers, and by the time this broadcast comes on, they'll probably be celebrating, but it's too bad they can't win it at home, and they have to do it in a bubble, but at least people got to watch some basketball.
I think that's the thing that we should underline right there. The NBA did a good job of getting, I thought it was over with. Thought the season was over with. They did a good job making sure everybody was protected and safe. The Lakers got a championship, hopefully. You never know what's going to happen. They're up 3-1. So hopefully by the time this broadcast goes up, we'll say the Lakers have won number 17.
Now, right now, the baseball players are being played at neutral fields. So we know that the Rays and the Yankees are playing at Pepco. The Astros are playing. They're playing at Dodger Stadium against the A's, and of course, the Dodgers and Padres are playing in Arlington Park, Texas. So, but they're doing it because they want to keep these players under a bubble, and I think they made the right decision. What do you think?
I think so too. Remember earlier in the year they thought about shutting it in the summer. St. Louis had a bunch of outbreaks. They thought the season was going to be canceled. So I think they've done a very good job.
So the big story is the Tennessee Titans in the NFL. They got what
20 tests between players and personnel. 20 positive tests.
And and then the Patriots picked up a couple more today.
Stephen Gilmore, the cornerback, just tested positive.
So the NFL, if they don't control this, there could be a bigger breakout. So it worries me. They were doing okay, and all of a sudden these things are popping up. So I still like you and I have been saying the last 3-4 podcasts. It's week to week.
Yeah, no, and same thing with college sports as well. You're right. It's very much week to week.
And the college is the same way, and how you control some of these kids leaving the dormitory, and I think we're going to still have some more problems with the college season,
Kids being kids, how do you stop? We were the same way, I guess, when we were that age.
And they're being tested 3 times a day. And how much time we got left? We're gonna wrap this up to the next segment. But anyway, yeah, and we'll talk about the NFL, okay? All right. Well, Ed, welcome to the final segment here today for American Talk It Up. Hey, I want to bring up college football. This Saturday is Oklahoma, Texas, and they've been playing each other since 1901 or something like that, and they've been playing at the Cotton Bowl for over 70-some years. Now, if you don't know the history, half of the stadium is Oklahoma fans and half is Texas, and it's always held during the State Fair of Texas. And it's been a tradition, and it's like if you want to, it's one of the special games. They use it as a recruiting tool. If you come to Oklahoma, Texas, you get to play in the OU Texas game, and it's one of the biggest games. It's one of the biggest games, in the history, for one of the greatest rivalries. And when I was a little boy, I remember in 1959, I was like in the first grade. I went to the game. My dad drove down there, and we stayed at the I'm trying to remember the whole Congress Hotel, and there was so much partying going on. It was a big thing in Oklahoma, Texas, and the State Fair. I'd never been to a State Fair as big as Texas, and they had the Ferris wheel, and they had the corn dogs, and it was just like, can you imagine going to the New Mexico State Fair and a football game is on the grounds?
That would be so awesome. It really would be.
And so I remember that game. And this year, both Oklahoma and Texas are not winning. Oklahoma's 1-2, and Texas is 1-1 or 1-2, or I think they're 2-1.
TCU beat them last week.
Yeah, and but it was a special game as a kid growing up, and I remember when we moved to Albuquerque, we would watch those games, and my dad, if Oklahoma, and back in the '60s, Darrell Royal dominated Oklahoma, they just couldn't beat them, and my dad would take those games so personal, you couldn't talk to him for days. It was like, remember when the Cowboys lost the Super Bowl?
Oh yeah,
You get so emotional, draw into the team, and then and after a while. Even when the Lobos lost, my dad took it personal. But anyway,
your dad sounds a lot like me, man. He does.
He was. I don't know. Now here's this game. The state fair's been canceled in Dallas. I think they're going to allow like 25,000 people to come to the game, like a third of the stadium. So it's not going to be the environment they had, but what was beauty about that game is the Texas fans would sing the song "Eyes of Texas Upon You," Boomer Sooner, and so it's one of the great traditions of football. But I'm glad they're playing the game, and the game's going to come on like 10 in the morning on Saturday. I wish they would play it later, but anyway, the thing I'm going to miss with the Lobos is we're not going to play the Aggies. And that's been going on how many years? Almost 100 years.
I think 100 years as well.
It's going to be the first time we've never played the Aggies in 100 years. And that's why, even though New Mexico is going to have a schedule of 8 games, we don't know if they're going to have a home game because the governor hasn't lightened up the restriction, but I hope they do. But I'll tell you what, I hope college football makes it. But like you said, there's incidents happening with teams all over the country. I just wonder, can they make it to December? What do you think?
I hope so. I know the University of Houston had 5 of their games canceled already, and as you mentioned, even the NFL is having outbreaks. Notre Dame had some outbreaks earlier this season. Good news is I just read something about the Lobos. They tested Sunday, 0 positives. That was good news. But this thing comes out of nowhere. It's like all of a sudden you're rolling along, and then bam, boom, bing. You get about 10 here, 5 here. And I'm going to tell you this again. We were just talking about this with Wally Dragmeister, is that until they get that vaccine, we're going to be looking at this for a while. So until we, hopefully roll that thing out by the end of the year, next year, we're going to be looking at this for a while.
It's going to be up to the players to control themselves because
that's true too.
Because the Lobos are testing 3 times a week, so they test Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and they have now the way it's set up in the Big 12. I think the Mountain West is going the same way. You got to have your roster ready to go by 5:00. So they test you Friday morning, and then you got to have a position player and a backup, or you can't play that game. The game's canceled. So the Lobos, now the good thing is, the thing that I was impressed with the Lobos, they've seen these other colleges screw up, and they've got it down pretty good. They know that you can't let these guys leave campus and run around, so they've got people under control. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised there is another person that gets positive, but they've learned. They're lucky. They've been laying low, watching how things are going, and they've got it down pretty good. And Oklahoma's learned a big lesson. They almost didn't play their first game because they barely had enough guys, and that's what happened to Baylor and Houston. And so, I think the teams are learning what they have to do to get through the season, and the players want to play really bad, Ed, because they want to, they know that if they screw up, they're going to jeopardize their team. Now, the NFL, it's big money on the line. Remember, they get their paycheck on Monday morning at 10:00. And the way it's done, if you make $1 million, your paycheck is divided by 16 weeks. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
So you don't get a lump, $1 million lump. You get 16 checks divided into a million. So, for example, we have a kid from El Dorado High School. They went on to play for Michigan, named Zach Gentry. Mm-hmm. He's the 3rd tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's making, I think, $621,000. So he's getting a check for $47,000. If you make the roster. He's on the 53-man roster. That's why it's so important they make the roster. Even though they only dress out 48 players. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did. Of course I knew
and
that.
With that, and Gentry has not played the last 3 games. He has not dressed out, but he's still getting his $47,000 check on Monday at 10 o'clock. So now, and it's like who was it? Big Ben from the Steelers.
Ben Roethlisberger.
They interviewed and he said, "You know what, Marty, I don't want to be the guy that screws up these guys' paychecks. We're going to be very careful, and we've got a rule on our team. Nobody gets the virus." So they understand, because money's on the line here.
That's right. A lot of it too.
And so that's how they get paid. And their last paycheck is the 16th week. And now, if you re-sign they usually give you a signing bonus. So if you re-up your contract for another 4 years, they normally give you a signing bonus, and you get to keep all that.
Right.
But there's no guarantee on the paycheck. Did you know that? Even though Zach Gentry has a $641,000, whatever his salary, he's not guaranteed on that salary. He's not.
Some players are, but yeah, he's not.
He's not. So he's so lucky he's on the roster, and every Monday I got to believe he's a happy guy at 10 o'clock when he sees that paycheck for $47,000.
Yeah. And of course, he wants to get on the field and play, but you're still getting that kind of money. I think I can
That's
live
pretty
with that.
darn. And so that's how much money's at stake. Now, college, it's being eligible, and so I don't know. Here we are in October. I just wonder, when we have this podcast in November, what these stories are going to be like.
No, it's a good question, because as you mentioned, it's week to week. Look at high school here. We thought we were going to be able to start our the high school schedule this week, and not yet. Not until those numbers start going down, and hopefully they'll start going down soon. I feel awful for the kids. I feel awful for the coaches, people that are getting ready, right, to play. But again, it's a safety thing, and I understand the other side of that too. So hopefully this thing will go down, and the kids will be able to start getting out there and doing what they do best, and going back to school. I want to make sure of that too.
So just so you know, Ed, 46 states are playing high school sports right now, and we're not one of them. Okay, now, to be the devil's advocate, I just talked to my friend Fred Hoberg and his nephews, Andy Morgan. He's the NBC affiliate sportscaster there in El Paso, and he told us last night that 3 of the schools in El Paso had to shut down football for a week, so they had 3 or 4 kids. So those things are happening, and I know of a high school in Oklahoma. They had to cancel 2 games. They're going to come back this week, but they've been out for 2 weeks because they had 3, 4 kids. So those incidents are happening. And I heard another story where there's 5 high schools in Tennessee shut down for.
I heard that too.
So even though, but they're playing, okay, and they're all surviving. And not one person's died yet. But you're right. The first person that dies, it's going to be a big story.
Let me just bring up a point. We had the chaparral teacher died of COVID, and our hearts go out, prayers go out to the family. But I was reading the
Now, she's a chaparral. What?
Chaparral teacher at Chaparral High School in New Mexico. Chaparral.
Okay.
A man. It's a male teacher, and our hearts go out. And but I was reading on NMOT Sports, and a comment was made that, "Oh, this is rare. Don't live your life in fear." This, it's like, okay, I understand that, but at the same time, I'd be cautious, and maybe it doesn't make me scared, but it kind of makes me like, okay, wait a minute. I think we still have to be aware, is what I'm saying. I didn't say be paranoid and lock yourself up and board yourself up in your house. I didn't say that, but I just think we have to be careful and and make sure you wear your mask. The whole thing. You have to embrace the science, in my opinion. We don't want anybody getting sick, right? Now, some of the things you mentioned, I'm glad those states are playing. But there have been shutdowns of teams that started out and then they had a lot of positive tests and they had to stop the season. So hopefully this thing starts going down and flattening, and the kids in New Mexico can get back on the field again.
But it is a 99.7.
Marty, listen to me. Listen.
Yeah.
Even that 1%, I'm sorry, man. That's just me. If somebody gets sick and dies, I it's not worth the risk, in my opinion. There's going to be a lot of people that would tell me, you don't know what you're talking about. The kids need to play, and I get it. This is somebody that's been around sports my whole life. Remember, you're talking to somebody that participated, coached, ref, played.
Right.
So talking to the wall here, but I'm just saying, if there even is that percentage of a risk, you have to look at it. People can wash it away and say, well, it's not that big a deal. The president got it. Thank God the president recovered, right? Thank God the first lady's recovering. And in some cases, you're right. People recover and they move on. In some cases, 220,000 people will tell you that they didn't. And I understand there's other underlying issues. I get all that. Jimmy Tran might tell me we're not getting all the information. I don't know that. None of us here know that. And we don't know. All we know is that I just know this, that anybody behind a keyboard can be an expert. I'm not an expert. I just, I try to follow
All right,
what I
so
can.
This thing's going to play out, and every week we'll probably talk about it next week. We'll see what's going on. But there is 46 states playing, and there's been some ups and downs. There's no about it. It's not perfect, so we'll see. But God knows how this thing's going to play out. This is something we've never experienced, you and I, in our lifetime, and I guess you're right, Ed. It's easy to be Monday morning quarterback, the comments, but I think it's just going to be. I guess, week to week how this thing plays out. Now they are planning to play football in El Paso, Texas. That's right over the border.
They already are, right? They already are.
But there have here's the thing that my boss at ProView, Steve Davis, brought up. The problem we have with high school sports, unlike the NFL and the major colleges, they don't have the testing equipment. They can't test like 3 times. And that testing equipment probably costs money, and most of these schools can't afford it, right, Ed?
Well, think about these poor schools
Yeah.
that can't afford that. Yes, you're right. New Mexico's a poor state, so yes, you're right.
So I don't care if you take somebody's temperature check and look for symptoms. A lot of these guys get this virus. What do they call it? It's somatic. Asymptomatic. So we don't know, and until they have testing at the high school level, you're going to get more people testing positive. And they've got this new Abbott machine that they're using right now, where you can test a guy 30 minutes, or they can get a result in 30
Right.
minutes. And that's why in the Big 12 you take your test on Friday at 10, and you got to have a report in by 5 o'clock. So they're doing it. And the Pac-12 is going to do the same thing, and the Mountain West is following the same suit. So we'll see how this thing goes. I'm hoping the Lobos won't play until October 24th. I'm glad we got a game, but maybe all our home games will be on the road unless the governor opens it up a little bit. I hope she does, just that we could have a home game. But
You remember one thing. Now I'm going to say this again. I'm a sports guy. I'm looking forward to seeing the Lobos play. I really am. I want to see what Coach Gonzalez is going to do. I think he's going to do great things. But it's not just about sports for her. You mentioned the restaurant people want things open, to schools, right? So I don't know. I mean, all I know about her, I don't know anything. You know her. You met her. I don't know her at all. All I know is what she's done. She's a numbers governor, and I'm going to say this again, and I've said this already. Some of it to me is political. If Joe Biden wins, she kind of is, I think, angling for a position. I really believe she is. But I'll still say, to be fair, let me be fair about that, she still has New Mexico's interests, in my opinion, at heart. But some of it, just maybe this much of it, is a little bit political. And everything is political, no matter who makes the decision, and that includes President Trump, that includes Mayor Keller, that includes Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Look, I'm glad I'm not any one of them, because these decisions in the middle of a global pandemic are not easy, and I'm glad it's not me having to make those decisions.
well, okay, I'm not disagreeing with you, but they had a game in Ames, Iowa, last Saturday night against Oklahoma, and Iowa State they won a great game. They pulled off a big win over Oklahoma. But they had 22,000 people, and they just came out with a report the other day, no positive, but they were all wearing masks. They were 6 feet apart. They had the band. And so I think you can I think you can have games. Of course, the players are in a bubble the way they're doing it right now with 3 tests. So I think you could I think the governor should open up a little bit, Ed. I think, but you're right, a little bit of everything. But if Iowa can do it, and Oklahoma could do it, and other schools can do it, they had like 20,000 at the TCU game, Texas, and they had them, so I think it can be done.
Cowboys had 21,000 in their stadium, so I'm not disagreeing there either. I don't want you to think I'm disagreeing.
So with that saying, maybe this will change the next time we have a podcast. But hey, we've had a good podcast, and folks, if you like America Talk It Up, go up to the Facebook and hit the follow button and hit the like button, and go up to YouTube and hit subscribe. And believe me, if you love this kind of stuff, and there's one thing I can say about Ed and I, we are very open in our dialogue. We tell it like it is, and that's kind of why I love to have you as a host, because we don't throw any punches.
Yeah, we respect each other too, and I think that's important.
So with that saying, folks, we'd like to see you next time, and God bless everybody out there, and be safe. Be safe.